The gunshot echoed across the frozen plains just as Adelaide Kane decided she would rather die than marry Silas Morton. And that decision sent her fleeing into the worst blizzard Montana territory had seen in 20 years. She ran blindly through the December darkness, her wedding dress already torn and mudded from climbing out her bedroom window 3 stories down. The wind cut through the thin satin like knives, and her slippers were already soaked through, her feet going numb with each desperate step. Behind her, she could hear the shouts of the men her father had sent after her, their torches flickering like demon eyes in the swirling snow. Adelaide had turned 23 just last month, old enough that her father considered her nearly unmarriageable, which was why he had arranged this union with Morton, a cattle baron twice her age with a reputation for cruelty that extended far beyond his business dealings. She stumbled over a rock hidden beneath the fresh powder and went down hard, her hands plunging into snow so cold it burned. For a moment, she considered just staying there, letting the cold take her peacefully rather than facing what awaited if they dragged her back. But something in her refused to surrender that easily. Adelaide pushed herself up and kept moving, though she had no idea where she was going anymore. The lights of Rawhide had disappeared behind the curtain of white, and she could no longer hear her pursuers over the howling wind. Her teeth chattered so violently she bit her tongue, tasting blood. The wedding dress that had cost her father a small fortune was now worse than useless, collecting snow and ice, weighing her down. Adelaide's dark hair, which had been pinned up elaborately just hours ago, now hung in frozen strands around her face. She tried to think to form some kind of plan, but her mind was growing foggy, her thoughts moving as slowly as her freezing feet. She did not know how long she walked. It might have been minutes or hours. Eventually, her legs simply gave out, and she collapsed against what felt like a fence post. Adelaide tried to stand again, but her body would not obey. The cold was almost comfortable now, which some distant part of her mind recognized as a very bad sign. She closed her eyes. That was when she heard the horse. At first, she thought she was imagining it, but then came the sound of a man's voice, low and urgent, and strong hands lifting her. Adelaide tried to speak, to protest or thank him or something, but her jaw would not work properly. "I got you," the voice said, and she felt herself being lifted onto a horse, a solid warmth at her back as the rider mounted behind her. "Stay with me now. My place is not far." She wanted to stay conscious, to see who had found her, but the darkness pulled her down like deep water, and she surrendered to it. Adelaide woke to warmth and the crackling of a fire. For a moment, she was disoriented, expecting to find herself in her bedroom in her father's house. But the ceiling above her was rough wooden beams, and she was wrapped in what felt like a dozen blankets that smelled of wood smoke and something else, something masculine and not unpleasant. "You are awake." She turned her head, ignoring the way it pounded, and saw him for the first time in the firelight. He sat in a wooden chair a few feet from the bed, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, watching her with an expression of relief and concern. He was younger than she expected, maybe 26 or 27, with dark hair that needed cutting and eyes that looked gray in the dim light. His face was weathered from sun and wind, with a strong jaw and features that were more rugged than handsome, but arresting nonetheless. He wore a simple flannel shirt and work pants, his hat and coat hanging by the door. "Where am I?" Adelaide's voice came out as a croak. "My ranch, about 5 miles outside Rawhide." He reached for something beside the chair and held out a cup. "Water. Drink slow." She tried to sit up and realized she was wearing a shirt that definitely was not hers. Her face flushed hot despite her still cold extremities. "I did not look," he said quickly, seeming to understand her distress. I mean, I had to get you out of that wet dress before you froze to death, but I kept my eyes on what I was doing and nothing else. Your things are drying by the fire." Adelaide took the cup with trembling hands and sipped. The water was cool and clean, and she had never tasted anything better. "Thank you," she managed. "You saved my life." He shrugged, looking uncomfortable with the gratitude. "Could not very well leave you out there. What were you doing wandering around in a blizzard in a wedding dress?" The question brought everything rushing back, and Adelaide felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them away furiously. She had done enough crying in the weeks leading up to the wedding. Running away. From the wedding or the marriage. Both. She took another sip of water. "My father arranged a marriage to a man I cannot abide. I climbed out the window rather than go through with it." He studied her for a long moment. "Silas Morton," she looked up sharply. "You know him." "Everyone in this territory knows Morton." His expression had gone hard. "My condolences that your father would sell you to a man like that. You understand then why I ran." "I do." He stood, unfolding to his full height, which had to be over 6 feet. "I am Austin Keller. This is my ranch, such as it is. Adelaide Kane." She clutched the blankets closer. "How long was I unconscious?" "Most of the night. It is near dawn now." Austin moved to the fireplace and used a poker to adjust the logs. "The storm is still going strong. No one will be traveling in this, which means you are safe here for now. My father will come looking for me, and Morton." "Let them come." There was something in his voice, a quiet strength that made her believe he was not afraid of either man. "When the weather clears and it is safe, I will take you wherever you want to go. But right now, you need to rest and get your strength back. You came close to freezing to death out there." Adelaide looked around the cabin properly for the first time. It was small but well built. A single room with the bed in one corner, a table and chairs, the fireplace, and what looked like a small kitchen area. Everything was neat and orderly but Spartan, like a man who owned only what he needed and nothing more. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Just me and my horse." Austin turned back to her. "I have some stew left from dinner. You should eat something." Her stomach growled in response, and despite everything, she found herself smiling slightly. "I suppose I should." He ladled stew into a bowl and brought it to her along with a spoon. Adelaide managed to sit up more fully, keeping the blankets tucked around her, and took the bowl. The stew was simple, beef and vegetables, but it was hot and seasoned well, and she ate it hungrily. Austin returned to his chair, watching her in a way that should have made her uncomfortable but somehow did not. There was nothing predatory in his gaze, just a kind of careful attention, as if he was making sure she was truly all right. "How did you find me?" she asked between bites. "In all that snow and darkness." "I was checking on my cattle, making sure they had shelter from the storm. I heard something, thought maybe it was a calf in trouble." He shook his head. "Never expected to find a woman in a wedding dress half frozen in a snowdrift. I am very grateful you did." Adelaide finished the stew and set the bowl aside. "I truly mean that. You saved my life, Mr. Keller." "Austin," he corrected. "And you are welcome, Miss Kane." "Adelaide," she offered in return. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows, and she shivered despite the warmth of the fire and blankets. Austin noticed immediately. "You are still cold, just the sound of it." She pulled the blankets tighter. "I thought I was going to die out there. You are safe now." He stood and moved to a trunk in the corner, pulling out another blanket. He brought it to her and laid it gently over the others. "Try to get more sleep. Your body needs time to recover." Adelaide found herself studying his face as he adjusted the blanket. There was a sadness in his eyes, something deep and old, and she wondered what had put it there. Before she could stop herself, she asked, "Why do you live out here alone?" Austin's hand stilled for a moment, then he stepped back. That is a long story. The storm does not seem to be letting up any time soon. He almost smiled at that. Almost. Fair enough. He returned to his chair and was quiet for so long she thought he had changed his mind about telling her. Then he began to speak. I had a family once, a wife and a daughter. We lived in town and I worked at the lumber mill. His voice was steady, but she could hear the pain beneath it. 3 years ago there was a fire. Started in the middle of the night. I was working a late shift. By the time I got there, the whole block was burning. I tried to get to them, but the flames were too much. They died in that fire, both of them. Adelaide's heart clenched. Austin, I am so sorry, he continued as if she had not spoken. After that, I could not stay in town. Every street, every building reminded me of what I had lost. So I bought this land, built this cabin, started over. He looked at her then. I've been alone ever since. It seemed easier that way. Easier but not better, Adelaide said softly. No, he admitted. Not better. But after you lose everything, you stop caring about better. You just try to get through each day. They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling between them. Adelaide understood loss in a different way. She had lost her mother when she was young, and her father had become a hard, distant man afterward, more concerned with business and appearances than with his daughter's happiness. That was why he had no qualms about marrying her off to Morton. What will you do? Austin asked. When the storm clears, where will you go? It was the question Adelaide had been avoiding thinking about. I have an aunt in San Francisco, my mother's sister. We have written letters over the years. I think she would take me in, at least until I can figure out what comes next. That is a long journey, especially this time of year. I know, she met his eyes, but I cannot stay here. My father has influence in Rawhide. He would find me eventually, and I would rather face the journey than face Silas Morton as my husband. Austin nodded slowly. I understand. When you are strong enough and the weather permits, I will help you get to the train station in Helena. From there, you can book passage to California. You would do that? I would. Adelaide felt tears threaten again, but this time from gratitude rather than despair. I do not know how I will ever repay you. No repayment needed. Austin stood and moved to bank the fire. Right now, you need rest. We can worry about the rest later. She wanted to argue to stay awake and talk more, but exhaustion was pulling at her again. Adelaide settled back into the pillows, warm and safe for the first time in months. As she drifted off, she heard Austin moving quietly around the cabin, and she felt a sense of peace she had not known in years. When Adelaide woke again, pale winter light was filtering through the windows, and the sound of the wind had died down to a steady whisper. She felt stronger, her mind clearer, though her body still ached from her ordeal. Austin was at the table, working on something she could not quite see. Good morning, she said, and he looked up. Afternoon, actually. You slept through most of the day. He set down whatever he had been holding. How are you feeling? Better, sore, but better. She sat up, making sure the blankets stayed secure. Has the storm stopped? Mostly. Still snowing lightly, but the worst has passed. Austin stood and brought her another cup of water. The problem is how much snow fell. Must be 3 feet of it out there. It will be a few days before the roads are passable. Adelaide took the water, her mind racing. A few days meant a few days for her father and Morton to search for her. They will be looking for me. Likely. Austin sat down on the edge of the bed, keeping a respectful distance. But they would have to know where to look, and this ranch is pretty isolated. I do not get many visitors. What about supplies? Won't people notice if you come to town? I stocked up before the storm. We have plenty of food and firewood. He paused. But you are right to be cautious. Your father will have men searching. He will offer a reward, Adelaide said quietly. A substantial one. Are you sure you want to harbor me? It could bring you trouble. Austin's expression did not change, I am sure. But why? You do not know me. I know you were desperate enough to run into a blizzard rather than marry a man like Morton. That tells me enough. He stood and moved back to the table. Besides, I have never been one to care much what people like your father think. Adelaide studied him, this quiet man who had saved her life and asked nothing in return. You are a good man, Austin Keller. He did not respond to that, just picked up what he had been working on earlier. She saw now that it was a piece of leather and he had been tooling a design into it. His hands moved with practiced skill, the knife making precise cuts. Is that how you spend your time out here? She asked. Leather work, among other things, keeps my hands busy. He glanced at her. There are some books on the shelf if you want something to read, not a large selection, but they might help pass the time. Adelaide looked where he indicated and saw a small shelf with perhaps a dozen books. She recognized some of the titles, classics mostly. You like to read, my wife did. These were hers. He said it matter-of-factly, but she heard the weight behind the words. I kept them. What was her name? Adelaide asked gently, if you do not mind my asking. Austin was quiet for a moment, his hands stilling on the leather. Grace, and our daughter was Emma. She was 5. The grief in his voice made Adelaide's chest tight. They would be proud of you, I think, for helping me. I do not know about that. He set down the knife and looked at her. But Grace always said we should help people when we can. Guess I am still trying to live up to that. They fell into a comfortable routine over the next few days. Austin slept on the floor near the fire, insisting Adelaide keep the bed. He cooked simple but filling meals, and they ate together at the small table. Adelaide wore one of his shirts as a nightgown and during the day bundled herself in blankets, her dress still too damp to wear comfortably. They talked, tentatively at first, but with growing ease. Adelaide told him about her childhood, about her mother who had died when she was 12, about her father's slow transformation from a loving parent to a cold businessman. Austin spoke little of his past, but he told her about his ranch, his plans to expand the herd come spring, the quiet satisfaction he found in the work. On the third day, Adelaide insisted on helping with something, anything, tired of being an invalid. Austin showed her how to mend a bridle that had broken, and they sat together at the table, working side by side. Their hands brushed occasionally as they reached for tools, and Adelaide found herself acutely aware of his presence in a way she had not been before. You are good at this, Austin said, examining her work. Neat stitches. My mother taught me needlework. I suppose it transfers to leather. Adelaide tied off the thread and cut it. There. How is that? Perfect. He smiled, a real smile this time, and it transformed his face. Adelaide felt her heart do something strange in her chest. That night, as they sat by the fire after dinner, Austin reading one of Grace's books while Adelaide worked on darning a sock he had sheepishly admitted had a hole in it, she found herself thinking how comfortable this felt. How right. It frightened her a little, how quickly she had grown accustomed to his presence, how much she looked forward to their conversations. Adelaide. Austin's voice broke into her thoughts. You all right? You have been staring at that sock for 5 minutes without moving. She blinked and looked down at the needle in her hand. Sorry, I was just thinking. About what comes next, something like that. She set the darning aside. Austin, can I ask you something? Of course. You ever think about leaving this place, starting over somewhere new? He closed the book, marking his place with a finger. Sometimes. But this ranch, this land, it is all I have left. Selling it feels like giving up the last piece of the life I built. But you are not really living here, Adelaide said gently. You are just existing. There is a difference. Austin looked at her for a long moment. When did you get so wise? I am not wise. I just recognized the same thing in you that I felt in myself back in Rawhide. We were both trapped in different ways. And now I am free thanks to you. But I wonder if saving me might have reminded you that there is more to life than just surviving." He did not answer, just stared into the fire, his expression unreadable. Adelaide worried she had pushed too far, but then he spoke. "You are right. Grace would have hated seeing me like this, holed up alone, avoiding the world." He rubbed his face with both hands. "But I do not know how to be any other way anymore." Adelaide stood and moved to sit beside him on the floor, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "Maybe you start small. Maybe you just let yourself feel something again." Austin turned to look at her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. They were close enough that she could see the flecks of blue in his gray eyes, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. "I am feeling something," he said quietly. "That is the problem." Her heart was racing now. "Austin, I know this is not right. You have been through an ordeal, you are vulnerable, and I should not be thinking what I am thinking." He started to pull away, but Adelaide caught his hand. "What if I am thinking the same thing?" He searched her face. "Are you?" Instead of answering with words, Adelaide leaned forward and kissed him. It was tentative at first, just a soft press of lips, but when Austin responded, his hand coming up to cup her face, she deepened the kiss. It felt nothing like the few chaste kisses she had received from suitors her father had approved of. This felt like waking up, like coming alive. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Austin rested his forehead against hers. "We should not do this." "Probably not," Adelaide agreed. "But I do not want to stop." "Neither do I." He pulled back enough to look at her properly. "But Adelaide, you need to understand something. I am not a man of means. This ranch barely turns a profit. I cannot offer you the life your father would have wanted for you. My father wanted me to marry Silas Morton. I think we can both agree his judgment is suspect." She took both his hands in hers. "I do not need wealth, Austin. I just need a chance at happiness. And you think you could find that here, with me? I think I already have." He kissed her again, and this time there was no hesitation, no holding back. Adelaide felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, pressing closer. Austin's arms came around her, strong and sure, and she felt safer than she had in years. They stayed like that for a long time, kissing and holding each other by the firelight, the world outside forgotten. Eventually they drew apart and Austin helped her to her feet. "You should get some rest," he said, his voice rough. "Will you stay close?" she asked. "Not on the floor by the door. Here, beside the bed." Austin hesitated, then nodded. He pulled the chair over and sat down, taking her hand as she settled under the blankets. They stayed like that, fingers intertwined, until Adelaide drifted off to sleep. The next morning brought clearer skies and the sound of horses in the distance. Austin was at the window instantly, his body tense. "What is it?" Adelaide asked, sitting up. "Riders, 3 of them coming up from the south." He grabbed his coat and hat. "Stay inside and away from the windows." "Do you think it is my father's men?" "I do not know, but I am not taking chances." Austin checked his rifle and moved to the door. "Lock this behind me." Adelaide wanted to argue, to tell him not to go out there alone, but she saw the determination in his face and knew it would do no good. She watched from the window as he stepped outside, the rifle held casually but ready. The riders approached slowly, and Adelaide's heart sank as she recognized one of them. Frank Morrison, her father's foreman and the man who had been in charge of bringing her back the night she ran. The other 2 were ranch hands she knew by sight. Austin stood in front of the cabin, blocking their path. Adelaide could not hear what was said, but she saw Morrison gesture toward the cabin, saw Austin shake his head. The conversation went on for several tense minutes. Morrison becoming more agitated, Austin remaining calm but firm. Finally, Morrison wheeled his horse around and the three men rode off. Austin stood watching until they disappeared over the hill, then returned to the cabin. Adelaide unlocked the door and let him in. "What did they want?" she asked, though she already knew. "They are looking for you, of course. Said you disappeared the night of your wedding and your father is offering $1,000 for information leading to your safe return." Austin set the rifle aside. "I told them I had not seen anyone. Did they believe you?" Morrison was suspicious, but without proof, there is not much he can do. Austin took off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. "But he will be back, probably with more men. Your father is serious about finding you." Adelaide felt the walls closing in again, the brief sense of freedom slipping away. "I should leave, today. I will not put you in more danger. You will do no such thing." Austin came to her and took her hands. "The roads are still bad and you are not strong enough yet for that kind of journey. We will figure this out, but you running off half-ready is not the answer. But if they come back, then I will deal with it." His voice was firm. "Adelaide, I meant what I said last night. I am not letting you face this alone." She leaned into him, letting him hold her, drawing strength from his solid presence. "I am scared. I know, but we will get through this." He kissed the top of her head. Together. They spent the day preparing. Austin checked and rechecked his rifle and pistol, made sure the cabin was secure. Adelaide, feeling useless, insisted on helping however she could. She cooked while he worked, making a stew that would keep for days if needed. As night fell, Austin did not return to his chair but lay down beside her on the bed, both of them fully clothed, his arm around her shoulders. Adelaide rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Tell me about San Francisco," Austin said quietly. "About your aunt." "Her name is Patricia. She is my mother's younger sister, never married. She runs a boarding house near the bay." Adelaide traced idle patterns on his shirt. "She always wrote such wonderful letters, full of life and adventures. She told me once that if I ever needed a place to go, her door was always open." "Sounds like a good woman." "She is. She offered to take me in when my mother died, but my father refused. Said a young girl needed her father, not some spinster aunt." Adelaide sighed. "I wonder sometimes how different my life would have been if he had said yes." Austin was quiet for a moment. "Would you have met someone in San Francisco, built a life there? Maybe. Or maybe I was always meant to run into that blizzard so you would find me." He tightened his arm around her. "I am glad I found you, even if the circumstances were not ideal." Adelaide tilted her head up to look at him. "I am glad, too." They kissed again, slower this time, deeper. Adelaide felt heat building inside her, a wanting she had never experienced before. Austin must have felt it too because he pulled back, his breathing ragged. "We should stop." "Why?" Adelaide asked, her fingers tangling in his shirt. "We are both adults, both free to make our own choices." "You are not free yet. You are still legally promised to Morton." "A promise I never made. That was my father's arrangement, not mine." She kissed his jaw, his neck. "I want this, Austin, I want you," he groaned softly. "Adelaide, if we do this, there is no going back." "Good, I do not want to go back." She looked him in the eyes. "I want to move forward. With you." That was all it took. Austin kissed her again, and this time he did not pull away. They undressed each other slowly, hands shaking with a combination of desire and nervousness. When they finally came together, it was tender and passionate, and everything Adelaide had never known she was missing. Afterward, they lay tangled together under the blankets, the fire burning low. Adelaide felt changed, fundamentally different than she had been just hours before. Austin held her close, one hand stroking her hair. "I love you," he said quietly. I know it is fast, and I know we have only known each other a few days, but I love you, Adelaide. Tears spilled down her cheeks, happy tears this time. I love you too. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Then we will make this work, whatever it takes. How? My father will never stop looking for me. Austin was quiet for a long moment. What if we do not run? What if we face this head-on? Adelaide pulled back to look at him. What do you mean? I mean, what if we go to town tomorrow to the marshal and you make a statement? You are of legal age. You have the right to refuse a marriage you do not want. If we make it official, legal, your father will have no grounds to force you into anything. And Morton might bluster, but if you publicly refuse him, there is not much he can do. His reputation would suffer too much if he tried to force a woman who clearly did not want him. Adelaide thought about it. The idea terrified her, but Austin was right. Running would mean always looking over her shoulder, always wondering when her father would catch up. If she faced this now, legally and publicly, she could truly be free. All right, she said. We will go to town tomorrow. Austin pulled her close again. We will do it together. They set out at first light, Adelaide wearing her now dry wedding dress because it was the only clothing she had. Austin gave her his coat to wear over it, and they rode double on his horse, Adelaide sitting in front of him, his arms around her to hold the reins. The ride to Rawhide took just over an hour, the roads difficult but passable. Adelaide's nerves grew with every mile, but Austin's steady presence at her back kept her from losing her resolve. Rawhide was a modest town, a main street with a general store, a saloon, a church, and a few other businesses. The marshal's office was a small building near the center of town. Austin tied up his horse and helped Adelaide down, taking her hand as they walked to the door. Marshal Tom Brennan was a man in his 50s with a weathered face and kind eyes. He looked up in surprise when they entered, his gaze going from Austin to Adelaide to her wedding dress. Austin Keller, he said slowly. Been a while since you came to town. Marshal, Austin nodded. We need your help. Adelaide stepped forward. My name is Adelaide Kane. I need to make a statement. Over the next hour, Adelaide told her story. She told the marshal about her father's arrangement with Silas Morton, about her refusal and subsequent escape, about Austin finding her and saving her life. She stated clearly and firmly that she was of legal age, that she refused the marriage, and that she wanted it on record. Marshal Brennan listened carefully, making notes. When she finished, he sat back in his chair and looked at them both. Miss Kane, what you have told me is all well and good, but you need to understand something. Your father has been here, and he has made his own claims. He says you were kidnapped, possibly against your will, and that you may be in danger. That is not true, Adelaide said quickly. I ran away on my own. Mr. Keller saved my life. I am here of my own free will. I believe you, but your father has influence in this territory. So does Silas Morton. The marshal looked at Austin. You could be in trouble for harboring her, Austin. They could make your life very difficult. Let them try, Austin said calmly. The marshal sighed. You always were stubborn. He looked at Adelaide again. Miss Kane, are you certain this is what you want? Because once I file this statement, there will be consequences. Your father will likely cut you off, disown you even. Adelaide did not hesitate. I am certain. I would rather have nothing and be free than have everything and be imprisoned in a marriage I do not want. Brennan nodded slowly. All right then. He pulled out a form and began writing. I will make this official. It might not stop your father from trying to cause trouble, but it will be on record that you refused the marriage and that you are here willingly. As the marshal wrote, the door to the office burst open. Adelaide's father, Richard Kane, stood in the doorway, his face red with fury. Behind him stood Silas Morton and Frank Morrison. "There you are," Richard thundered. "Adelaide, get away from that man immediately." Adelaide stood her ground, Austin at her side. "No, father. You have disgraced this family, disappeared on your wedding day, and now I find you here with this rancher." He spat the word like a curse. "You will come home now and we will sort this mess out." "I am not coming home." Adelaide's voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I am 23 years old. I have the right to make my own choices." Silas Morton stepped forward, his cold eyes fixed on Adelaide. "You made a commitment, Miss Kane. Your father and I have an agreement. An agreement I never consented to." Adelaide looked at him without flinching. "I will not marry you, Mr. Morton. Not now, not ever." Morton's face darkened. "You seem to forget your father owes me a considerable amount of money. This marriage was to settle that debt." The revelation hit Adelaide like a physical blow. Her father had sold her to pay off gambling debts. She looked at Richard, saw the shame and defiance warring on his face, and knew it was true. "Is that what I am to you?" she asked quietly. "A commodity to trade away?" "You do not understand business, Adelaide," her father said, but his voice lacked conviction. "A man has to do what he must to protect his interests." "And what about protecting your daughter?" Austin spoke for the first time, his voice hard. "She is a person, not a bargaining chip." "You stay out of this," Morton snapped. "This is between family. I am making it my business." Austin moved slightly, placing himself between Adelaide and the other men. "The lady has made her choice clear. You would do well to respect it." Morton's hand moved toward his gun, and the room went tense. Marshal Brennan stood quickly, his own hand on his weapon. "That is enough," Brennan said sharply. "There will be no gunplay in my office. Mr. Morton, Mr. Kane, Miss Kane has made a legal statement refusing the marriage. She is of age and she has that right." "This is not over," Morton said, his eyes still on Austin. "Not by a long shot." "It is over," Adelaide said firmly. "I will not be threatened or bullied into marrying you. Whatever debt my father owes you, it is his to pay, not mine." Richard Kane looked at his daughter, and for a moment she saw something break in his expression. "Adelaide, please, be reasonable. If you do not marry him, I will lose everything." "Then you should have thought of that before you gambled it away." Adelaide felt tears threaten but refused to let them fall. "You have already lost me, father. You lost me the moment you tried to sell me to this man." The finality in her words seemed to register. Richard's shoulders slumped. "You are making a terrible mistake." "The only mistake I made was not running sooner." Adelaide took Austin's hand. "I am sorry it came to this, father, but I have to live my own life now." The three men left, Morton's parting glare promising trouble to come. When they were gone, Adelaide felt her legs go weak, and Austin caught her, guiding her to a chair. "You did well," he said quietly. Marshal Brennan finished the paperwork and had Adelaide sign it. "This is official now. You are free from any obligation to marry Morton." He looked at Austin. "But watch your back. Morton is not a man who takes rejection well." "I will," Austin promised. They left the marshal's office and were about to head back to Austin's horse when a woman's voice called out. "Adelaide Kane." "Is that really you?" Adelaide turned to see a woman about her age with red hair and a friendly smile. It took her a moment to place the face, then she remembered. "Martha Jenkins." "Martha Garrett now," the woman corrected, coming closer. "I married Tom Garrett last spring." "But I heard you were missing. Everyone has been talking about it." "I was not missing. I was making a choice." Adelaide gestured to Austin. "Martha, this is Austin Keller. Austin, Martha and I went to school together years ago." Martha's eyes went wide as she took in Adelaide's wedding dress and Austin's protective stance. "Oh my. There is a story here, is there not?" "Quite a story," Adelaide agreed. Martha looped her arm through Adelaide's. "You must come to my house and tell me everything." And you look like you could use some proper clothes. We are about the same size. I insist." Adelaide looked at Austin, who nodded. "Go ahead. I need to pick up some supplies anyway. I will meet you at Martha's house in an hour." Martha lived in a small but comfortable house on the edge of town with her husband, who was away on business. She sat Adelaide down with tea and listened, eyes growing wider as Adelaide told her the story. When it was done, Martha shook her head in amazement. "Adelaide Kane, you have more courage than anyone I know. Running away in a blizzard, standing up to your father and Morton." She paused. "And you are in love with this rancher." Adelaide felt herself blush. "I am. I know it seems fast. Love does not follow a schedule," Martha interrupted. "I knew I loved Tom after 3 days. When you know, you know." She stood and went to a wardrobe. "Now, let us find you something to wear that is not a wedding dress meant for another man." Martha gave Adelaide a simple but well-made dress in deep blue, along with undergarments, a warm cloak, and sturdy boots. She also packed a few other items of clothing into a bag. "I cannot take all this," Adelaide protested. "You can and you will. Consider it a gift to celebrate your freedom." Martha hugged her. "And you must promise to visit. I want to know how this story ends." "I will," Adelaide promised. When Austin arrived to collect her, his eyes widened at the transformation. Adelaide wore the blue dress, her hair braided and pinned up properly, the cloak around her shoulders. "You look beautiful," he said. Martha grinned. "Does she not? Now you take good care of her, Austin Keller, or you will answer to me." "Yes, madam," Austin said with a small smile. They rode back to the ranch as the sun began to set, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of pink and gold. Adelaide sat in front of Austin, leaning back against his chest, feeling more content than she could remember. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we live," Austin said simply. "We work the ranch, we build a life together, and we do not look back. And if Morton or my father cause trouble, then we deal with it, together." He kissed the top of her head. "But I think they will leave us alone. Morton has his pride, and your father has bigger problems than a daughter who will not bend to his will." Adelaide hoped he was right. When they reached the cabin, Austin helped her down and they went inside together. Adelaide looked around the small space that had been her sanctuary and now felt like home. "Austin, can I ask you something? Anything? Will you marry me?" He stared at her. "What? I know it is usually the man who asks, but we have not exactly done anything the traditional way so far." Adelaide took his hands. "I love you. I want to build a life with you. Will you marry me?" Austin's face broke into the widest smile she had ever seen. "Yes, absolutely yes." He picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. When he set her down, he kissed her deeply. "When?" he asked. "As soon as possible. Tomorrow, if the minister will do it." "Tomorrow it is." They rode to town the next day and found Reverend Samuel Clark at the church. He was an older man with white hair and a gentle demeanor. When they explained what they wanted, he studied them both carefully. "This is rather sudden," he observed. "We are certain," Adelaide said. The Reverend looked at Austin. "You are the man who lost his family in the fire." "I am," Austin said quietly. "And you believe you are ready to marry again." Austin looked at Adelaide, and the love in his eyes made her heart swell. "I did not think I would ever be ready, but she changed that. She gave me a reason to live again, not just survive." The Reverend smiled. "Then I would be honored to marry you. Shall we say this afternoon?" "I will need to arrange for witnesses." Martha and her husband Tom served as witnesses. Adelaide wore the blue dress Martha had given her, and Austin wore his Sunday best, which was still simple but clean and pressed. They stood before the Reverend in the small church, just the 5 of them, and exchanged vows. When Austin slipped a simple gold band on her finger, one he had bought that morning with money from selling some furs, Adelaide felt tears of joy slip down her cheeks. And when the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, and Austin kissed her, she knew she had made the right choice. They had a small celebration dinner at Martha's house. Then Austin and Adelaide rode back to the ranch as the stars came out. Adelaide was now Adelaide Keller, wife to a man she had known less than 2 weeks but loved with her whole heart. The winter passed in a blur of happiness. They settled into married life with surprising ease, working together to maintain the ranch and prepare for spring. Austin taught Adelaide to ride properly, to help with the cattle, to handle a rifle. She taught him to laugh again, to see joy in small things, to believe in the future. Word of their marriage spread through the territory. Some people were scandalized by the speed of it all, but most seemed to understand. Richard Kane did not reach out, but Adelaide heard through Martha that he had left Rawhide, his debts finally catching up with him. Silas Morton stayed away, his pride too wounded to cause trouble. As the snow melted and spring arrived, Adelaide discovered she was pregnant. Austin was overjoyed, though she could see the fear in his eyes, the memory of what he had lost before. "Nothing is going to happen," she told him firmly. "We are going to have this baby, and he or she is going to be healthy and strong." "You cannot know that," Austin said, but he placed his hand on her still flat stomach with wonder. "I do know it. I feel it." Adelaide covered his hand with hers. "We have been given a second chance, both of us. I believe we are meant to make the most of it." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Adelaide bloomed with health, and as her belly grew, so did Austin's confidence. He built a cradle with his own hands, carving intricate designs into the wood. Martha visited often, bringing baby clothes and advice, becoming the sister Adelaide had never had. On a warm day in early September, Adelaide went into labor. Austin rode for the doctor and Martha, then paced the cabin like a caged animal while Martha and Dr. Harrison attended to his wife. The labor was long but not difficult, and as the sun set, Adelaide delivered a healthy baby boy. When Austin held his son for the first time, tears streamed down his face. "He is perfect," he whispered. "What should we name him?" Adelaide asked, exhausted but happy. Austin looked at her. "I was thinking Joseph. It was my father's name, Joseph Keller." Adelaide smiled. "I love it." Little Joseph was an easy baby, healthy and content. Austin was a devoted father, involved in every aspect of his son's care. Adelaide watched him with their child and fell in love with him all over again. The ranch began to prosper. With Adelaide's help and Austin's renewed energy, they expanded the herd and improved the land. They built an addition to the cabin, adding a bedroom for Joseph and making the living space more comfortable. 2 years after Joseph was born, Adelaide had a daughter they named Grace, after Austin's first wife. It felt right, honoring the woman who had come before while celebrating the new life they had built. Grace was followed 2 years later by another boy, Daniel, and then 2 years after that by twin girls, Emma and Rose. The cabin grew into a proper house, and the ranch became one of the most successful in the area. Austin hired help, good men who worked hard and respected the family. Adelaide became known in Rawhide for her kindness and her strength, a woman who had chosen her own path and thrived. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Austin took Adelaide to the spot where he had found her that freezing night a decade before. A simple marker stood there now, a stone Austin had carved with the words "Where our life began." "I think about that night often," Adelaide said, leaning against her husband as they looked at the marker. "How close I came to dying and how you saved me." "You saved me too," Austin said. "I was dead inside, just going through the motions. You gave me purpose, Adelaide. You gave me a reason to live." She turned in his arms to face him, We saved each other then. We did." He kissed her softly, "and I would do it all again in a heartbeat." They stood there as the sun set. Two people who had found each other in the darkest of times and built something beautiful together. Around them, the land they had worked together stretched out, their home visible in the distance, smoke rising from the chimney where their children were likely helping the housekeeper prepare dinner. Adelaide thought about the frightened girl she had been, running into a blizzard to escape a fate she could not accept. That desperation had led her here, to this man, to this life. She would not change a single moment of it. Years continued to pass in contentment. Joseph grew into a strong young man who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Grace became a teacher in Rawhide, patient and kind like her namesake. Daniel showed an aptitude for business and helped expand the ranch's operations. The twins, Emma and Rose, were inseparable and brought constant joy and occasional chaos to the household. Adelaide maintained her friendship with Martha over the years, the two women growing old together, watching their children grow and eventually have children of their own. Austin never lost the quiet strength that had first drawn Adelaide to him. Though his hair grayed and lines deepened around his eyes, on warm evenings, they would sit on the porch of their house, watching the sunset, surrounded by the life they had built together. Austin would take Adelaide's hand, the same way he had that first night in the cabin, and they would sit in comfortable silence, two souls who had found their home in each other. Adelaide never heard from her father again. She learned years later that he had died in Denver, his gambling debts finally consuming everything he had. She felt sadness for the relationship they never had, but no regret for the choice she had made. Her real family was here, with Austin and their children. Silas Morton faded into obscurity, his cattle empire crumbling after a series of bad decisions. Adelaide felt no satisfaction in his downfall, only relief that he had never troubled them again after that day in the marshal's office. When Joseph married and brought his young wife to live on the ranch, Austin and Adelaide built a smaller house on the property for themselves, wanting to give the young couple space while staying close. They became the beloved grandparents, always ready with advice or help, but wise enough to let their children make their own mistakes and find their own way. Adelaide wrote to her Aunt Patricia in San Francisco, the aunt who had offered her refuge all those years ago. They corresponded regularly, and Patricia came to visit once, spending a month at the ranch and declaring it the most peaceful place she had ever been. She told Adelaide that she had made the right choice, that the love between her and Austin was clear for anyone to see. As they entered their 60s, Austin's health began to fail. Nothing dramatic, just the slow wearing down of a body that had worked hard for many years. Adelaide cared for him with the same devotion he had shown her that first night, making sure he was comfortable, spending long hours talking about their life together and the family they had raised. On a spring morning much like the one when Adelaide had given birth to Joseph, Austin passed away peacefully in his sleep, Adelaide's hand in his. He was 71 years old, and he had lived to see all 5 of his children grown, married, and happy, and to hold 8 grandchildren in his arms. The funeral was attended by the entire community. Austin had become a respected figure in the territory, known for his fairness, his hard work, and his devotion to his family. As they lowered him into the ground next to the marker for Grace and Emma, his first family, Adelaide felt a bittersweet peace. He had carried love for both families in his heart, and now he could rest. Adelaide lived another 5 years, spending her time with her children and grandchildren, working in the garden she had cultivated over the decades, and writing her memoirs at the urging of her daughters. She wrote about everything, from her desperate flight into the blizzard to the quiet, beautiful years of her marriage, wanting her descendants to know the story of how their family began. On the anniversary of the night Austin found her, Adelaide walked out to the marker he had placed all those years ago. She was 83 now, her hair white, her body frail, but her mind was still sharp. She stood at the spot, remembering the frightened girl she had been and the man who had saved her life. "I am coming to find you again," she said softly to the wind. "Wait for me." That night, Adelaide passed away in her sleep, a smile on her face. Her children found her in the morning, at peace in the bed she had shared with Austin for so many years. In her hand was a photograph of her and Austin on their wedding day, young and in love, standing in front of the little church in Rawhide. They buried her next to Austin, and the whole community came to pay their respects to the woman who had become a pillar of their town. Martha, now 90 years old and one of Adelaide's oldest friends, spoke at the funeral about the courage it took to run into that blizzard, and the grace it took to build the life Adelaide had lived. The ranch passed to Joseph, who ran it with the same dedication his father had shown. He made sure the marker where Austin had found Adelaide remained maintained, a reminder to future generations of where their family's story began. The house became a gathering place for the growing Keller family, filled with laughter and love, children and grandchildren carrying on the legacy Adelaide and Austin had built. Years turned into decades, and the story of Adelaide and Austin became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The tale of the woman who ran into a blizzard to escape a marriage she did not want, and the lonely cowboy who saved her life and found his own purpose in the process. It was a story of courage and love, of second chances and the beautiful things that can grow from the darkest moments. The marker where it all began still stands, weathered by time but maintained by the Keller family. It reads simply, "Where our life began." But to those who know the story, it represents so much more. It represents the moment two lost souls found each other, the moment purpose was rediscovered, and the moment a love story for the ages began on a freezing winter night in Montana Territory. Adelaide had run into that blizzard expecting to die, but instead she found life. Austin had been merely surviving, going through the motions, but Adelaide gave him a reason to truly live again. Together, they built something that lasted far beyond their own years, a family and a legacy rooted in love, courage, and the belief that it is never too late to start over. Their story became a reminder that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead us exactly where we need to be, that love can be found in the most unexpected places, and that saving someone else's life can be the very thing that saves your own. In the end, they had both been rescued that freezing night, pulled from different kinds of darkness into the warmth and light they created together.